We'll just go both ways and see what happens.
Don't worry, Jamie's going to make us look great. Anything else? Okay.
All right. So whenever you guys are ready.
Welcome back, everyone, to our second episode of MediaMixology. Once again, I am Oliver Nelson. I lead the media team at _Marketing, and this is Dave Ruppel.
I run the insights team here at _Marketing. And just to recap a little bit, the purpose of this web series is to bring more media-focused topics to light. I think there's a lot of effort on the industry, but not a lot are focusing specifically on media and even digital media at that point.
That's right. And as we left off the last time, we really talked a lot about, the importance of having that media strategy set up front, the effort that goes into it, and really, what some of those payoffs could be.
Right. And every episode, you'll notice, if you're an avid watcher, we have a few takeaways at the end of it. And just to recap what was the main takeaways from the first one, the importance of media strategy, I'll list those off, but I highly encourage you to go back and watch the episode in its entirety. So
it was a good one.
It was a good one.
I was proud of it.
Number one, why media strategy is helpful to brand strategy. Number two, how media strategy is effectively implemented. And number three, my personal favorite, why media strategy is best done by your media company and not an AOR. So go back, check out the former episode one. It's a good one.
If for no other reason, just to identify what was sailing past us, that looked pretty cool. So
yeah.
Thanks again to Jamie.
Or to critique and make sure we didn't say anything dumb.
All right, so that's a great segue into what we'll be talking about today.
Saying dumb things?
Yeah, saying dumb things. Love it. So today we're going to be talking about measurement strategy why that's important.
I want to talk about beer first.
Well, we're going to get there. Just hold your horses. So we're super excited to really start talking about insights, right? So we laid the foundation with a good media strategy and what that means. But really, a media strategy is nothing if you can't then go back and figure out, hey, what's happening with all my media once it's live and once it's in market?
Right. Going back and throwing a bunch of media at the wall and seeing what sticks is never going to be the most efficient way. It's almost never going to work. So you want to always plan ahead and understand, how am I going to evaluate this campaign? What does success look like? How am I going to make sure I'm hitting that and set that infrastructure up ahead of time? So that's really what we're going to concentrate a lot today.
That's right. But as we explained in the first episode, these really deep philosophical questions are best answered during a happy hour type environment where so many of us have made breakthroughs in terms of figuring out solves to challenges, and bringing solutions to clients. So,
right. Hard day, just like, let's go get a beer, and all of a sudden, great idea happens. And sometimes you write it down, sometimes you don't. But.
Absolutely. So the beer we'll be sampling today is called Distopian Dream Girl. It is a beer from Vermont, from Foam Brewing. These guys got their start in 2016. And really, the name says it all. The brewers are focused on the foam as a critical part of the beer, but they really equate the foam to those big clouds in the sky that you'll see on a day where you have a lot of thinking to do. Maybe you find yourself reclining on a grass field. I generally don't find myself there, but hey, it's the ethos and mantra of the brewery.
So fitting for this, the theme of happy hour style decision making and breakthroughs. So.
Absolutely. So cheers. We'll get some tasting notes here. We'll evaluate and measure the beer.
Very, very nice hoppy smell.
A good beer is nothing if you can't evaluate it and measure it and determine whether it's something you like.
What's our benchmark for the quality of this beer?
Well, we started episode one with Hop Slam, obviously, which is a personal favorite of mine. It's going to be hard to overcome that for me.
Citrusy.
Yes, this is very citrusy. It's light and it's well balanced. It's not too sweet. It is a 7%er, so it's sort of straddling that line between a single IPA and a double. And it's a really good, easy drinking beer at that ABV. So
yeah, I would never have thought this was 7%.
Yeah,
what was Hop Slam?
Hop Slam was 10. Yeah, and the breweries in Vermont enjoy access to really great water, really crystal clear, and as anyone who knows anything about beer understands, a lot of it has to do with the water. So,
it's the same as like pizza in New York, bagels even.
Right. So, why don't you share with us that great analogy and bring us into what we're talking about today,
right.
Dave?
So, measurement is data on a page, which we'll get to a lot. Basic data collection. So, look at this table. Measurement is that this table is 48 inches. But so what? Measurement strategy would be more of, well, I am decorating a new room, that there's a spot in there that I need a 48-inch table for. And then I'm going to look at tables and see which one's 48 inches and then use that one.
really both the measurement aspect and the measurement strategy aspect are equally important here, and you'll see that we really deal with the former first here in the first section of today's webinar, and then sort of pay off with the second strategic piece in the second half.
Right. So we'll kick off a little bit on infrastructure and things like that.
That's right.
With some myths and facts, I think.
Myths and facts.
Myths and facts.
I'm going to read to my esteemed colleague Dave here some myths and facts about measurement and about data, and then he's going to share his knowledge with us and hopefully help bring us forward here. So the very first one I'm going to say, the first statement is, I have all of my old dashboards, so I have all of the data I need.
Right. This came up a couple times, and one instance in particular I really remember on this, where we were on a call. It was some sort of transition conversation with some AORs and creative shop, just talking about the client's work and what was going to happen next. And I think we were onboarding another agency or creative agency at that point. And someone on the phone had mentioned, well, when you create dashboards for these companies, do you then just hand them off to them? What's your deliverable to them in the end? And it really got me thinking about, well, the deliverable isn't the dashboard itself. It's the insight that the dashboard provides, but more importantly, if I were the client, my request would not be, give me all my old dashboards, it's give me all my data.
That's right.
If you're looking at past performance, I'm not going to want to look at it the same way I did when it's present. If I'm looking at it right now, I'm going to want to say, well, how do I measure this to optimize or do other things and measure it in the moment? But if I want to see, well, what happened 2 years ago, I'm not going to optimize me to 2 years ago.
That's right. I mean, let's say that you're overseeing a brand and you look back and you're about to kick off a new media campaign. You look back and you have all these old, let's say they're PDFs, they're static dashboards. How are you going to slice and dice the data? How are you going to extract, a 12-month look? They can't do it. They're not living for you. You can't get new insights from them by evaluating them over a period of time.
Right.
Okay. So, statement 2, myth or fact, I'll always have access to my data.
So this is a fact, or really should be a fact. If you don't have access to your data, something is going wrong. For example, if you are working with a vendor who has your data, and then your rep changes or they go out of business or whatever it is, you're not going to have that data anymore to look back and say, is this working? Or how do I evaluate it 2 years ago? Or how do I evaluate it right now? I think it's come up in a lot of times where if you are, if you have access to this information, what happens if that vendor leaves?
For the most part, this isn't something that brand managers always think about up front, right? It's a very simple conversation to have. Do I get copies of the raw data? Which you should. It's yours. But what ends up happening is that's glossed over. It's lost in the initial push to get things set up, to see data coming back. And then let's say that vendor goes out of business.
Right.
Let's say that vendor is bought by someone else. Let's say that the salesperson or representative that you've worked for and developed that relationship leaves. Suddenly there are question marks hanging over, well, am I ever going to see that data again? And you're left with what we talked about in scenario 1, which is just old dashboards.
Yep.
Okay. So statement 3, all my data needs to be in the same place.
This is a myth. Now, is it easier if all the data is in the same place? Well, of course. It's one connection you have to make into your visualization platform or whatever it may be. But that doesn't mean that those connections need to exist on the same place, right? I know even for some of the dashboards we build for our clients, we're pulling in data from 5 or 6 different sources. And that's not a problem. There are a lot of different visualization tools that can easily mix those together and understand, and you can meld those data sources together to paint your picture.
So I'm not a data expert.
Okay.
And I know that I'm getting dashboards and at least getting sources of data from all different places. What's the bare minimum I should know to make it so that I can analyze it and get actual insights from it?
In terms of where the data is coming from?
Or just what do I need to remember in order to organize it?
Right. So the hope is that you'd have the data formatted in a similar way. Now, I'd say on an average dashboard, for let's say a media dashboard where you're looking at basic media KPIs, engagement rate, click-through, things like that, you could easily have 3-4 sources, right? If you're running a paid search campaign, you're going to use Google, Bing, things like that. If there's SEO involved, you've got a couple more data sources. If you have
some banners in market,
DCM might be,
basic,
or
basic
whatever
buys, like not even complex, media engagements.
Right. It doesn't necessarily need to be all in the same place. It just needs to be consistent if possible and accessible, right? I mean, you have to be able to access it to really build something. Now, I know we've gone to a lot of trouble kind of building up an infrastructure here where we've invested a lot of time, a lot of effort into creating an infrastructure that houses a lot of that data in a consistent way in a database. That's not required, right? You don't need to do that.
Because this, I mean, let's be honest, this is going to require significant investment in not only dollars, but also just time, hours, conversations, alignment with all of the different partners.
And plus, in a lot of cases, we've done it so you don't have to.
Right.
But at the same time, what this doesn't necessarily help is making sure that all of the information is consistent.
I think what is necessary and what we do want to talk about then is, okay, so if this physical investment is impossible for you, what are the critical components that you need to think about?
Right, and that is a hey, great segue.
I try.
It's less about speaking of which.
Cheers.
It is so good. It's less about where the data is and more about the data itself. Is it consistent?
Right, and so we've got two things that we want to leave you with coming out of the myths and facts, aside from having ownership and having access to your data, and that's really this idea of a data style guide. And there's two critical components that we really want to share here, and that's the first is making sure that all of the data, regardless of where it's originating from and who's providing it to you, is tagged and formatted the same way, because this will allow it to be looked at holistically in whatever format is working for you at the time, right? Could be Excel or an analytics dashboard. You can start to bring all of the data together, look at it apples to apples, and really launch into the optimization conversation.
Right, and that gets you
Wait. What even is optimization?
Wait, who's that guy?
This is Nick the Intern, and to answer Nick the Intern's question, optimization is defined as making the best or most effective use of a situation or resource. For media, this means extracting the best possible performance from your campaign against your chosen goals and KPIs.
Thanks, Jamie. That was a great definition. Couldn't have said it better myself. So anyway, speaking of myself, let's get back to data style guide.
Say you're getting paid search data from different sources like Bing and Google. You want that information coming in so you can evaluate those two engines against each other.
That's right. So it's really critical that conversation is led and ensured that all of your different vendors and sources are tagged and formatted the same way, because this will allow it to be looked at holistically in whatever format is working for you at the time, right? Could be Excel, could be an analytics dashboard.
And the tagging will be different, obviously, based on the channel, but you have to do it in some sort of structure that you would be able to compare or have it in a consistent manner.
And Jamie's throwing up a visual of what, like let's say for a paid search campaign, what simple UTM parameters would look like. This would be an example of the kinds of things that need to be in lockstep and formatted the same. Otherwise, you're going to be trying to measure and look at things that can't actually be combined together.
But there's also a more important method or aspect of the data style guide, and that's making sure you've all agreed on the right source for benchmarks and KPIs.
Right, and I'll be honest, this is one of the most frustrating arguments that I've had over and over again in my career, and it's when you've got one partner who's looking at Omniture data and one partner who's looking at Google Analytics data.
But you should never have those two on the same
website.
That's
beside the point.
Example.
Somebody has 30 clicks, someone else has 25 clicks, and it's who's right and which number are we paying our cost per click off of. So really critical to know upfront and to share with all of your partners, hey, in this example, Google Analytics is the source we're going to look at for the final evaluation, the be-all, end-all.
Right. So that is really a lot of the infrastructure discussions, almost the measurement aspect of it.
That's your tape.
That's the tape measure.
That's how we know.
How are you going to make sure this table is 48 inches wide?
That's right.
But that obviously doesn't know, what are we doing with it? What do we care about? And that's what we want to get into now is, now that you have this information, it's in a consistent format, we can make sense of it, what do we do with it? So let's pretend we have a multimedia campaign that our KPI or key performance indicator is that we want to increase scripts for a pharmaceutical company. If you have, let's say, this dashboard, which is really not a dashboard, it's more of a,
I don't know what this is.
a mathematics professor just threw up all over this page and just has a lot of placement data and things like that don't really mean much. I got laughs from Jamie and Craig for the record. It doesn't mean much. Now, someone with a trained eye who's been in the business for a while could look at this for a while and start to make some inferences about what's happening.
No, I mean, I have a trained eye, and this doesn't mean anything to me. Look, you've got opens, you've got open rate, you've got registrations and engagements. Which one's important? Which one do I care about? Where are my goals? Where are my benchmarks? There's been no thought here.
Right. This is measurement. Really.
Right. This is just measurement.
It's measurement visualized. There's a bunch of information on the on a table that doesn't mean much.
I've got a laser level and a bunch of tape measures, but I don't know what to do with them, and I don't know what numbers matter to me. That's what this is.
This is basically you've gone in and you've measured it. You've measured a table and you've said, great, it's 30 inches.
Did we need that? Did we?
No. Silence. This is 30 inches. That's what this is.
Right.
Means nothing.
Okay.
So, let's not use that ever again. Now, the next dashboard we want to talk about is a step in the right direction. This one allows you to understand the media performance. It's not that script lift KPI we're originally talking about, but there actually is a couple instances where it does make sense to look at media this way. So this allows you to look at the media performance and is it performing against benchmarks or against other tactics of the same type, right? It gives you maybe an optimization point of, is this placement performing well versus this other placement, and can we adjust it?
That's right, and you can see as we click through on the screen, you can see that this kind of a dashboard is interactive, right? So unlike in Excel where you're going to have to be building pivot tables on the fly, this has been thought out in advance. You've got certain screens and views that are set up initially, but you can clearly click through and modify, and you've got all of your primary channels at the top. So you can look at your search, you've got your traditional display, you've got your third channel partners, all sort of neatly arranged at the top. But you also have your executive summary.
Right.
And this is going to tell the real simplified so what story to potentially your boss or to your boss's boss, who is inevitably going to come back to you and say, all these dollars we're investing, is it working or not? And
this will be a good answer for you in those scenarios if you have done a lot of pre-work.
Yes, this is a front-ended metric dashboard to be sure.
Now, if the answer, if the main KPI that we want to do in this multimedia campaign is script lift, if you've gone to the work ahead of time, which, believe me, we've had clients who've done this and they've invested a lot of time, money, and effort into it, understanding proxies. Does this engagement or this open of this email lead to a script, or does it take 5 to lead to a script? If you've done that work ahead of time, this dashboard might be all you ever need, because you'll know, well, hey, I've got 25 opens, therefore that means 5 scripts, and we know from methodology that comes back to.
Right. This dashboard is assuming that you've figured those benchmarks out, which you can clearly see are outlined here. And it's also an interactive and living dashboard, so it answers the ownership and access piece in the sense of, as you're having a real-time conversation, and you'll see us clicking through here, you can see that the data is interactive. You can change the visualizations, you can change the views, you can answer a specific question about how did my data perform, or how did my search campaign perform on the 23rd of June in 2018. You can pull that up here. But to Dave's point, this is your front-end metrics, things like clicks, things like impressions, things like open rates, which are fine assuming you have that methodology and you've made that leap.
Or, and the last part about it too, if your goals are more simple. Say your overall goal of the campaign was reach and frequency.
Sure.
Then this would be able to answer that for you. So
That's
things
right.
like that. It's not, if your KPI is script lift, it's halfway there unless you've done the proxy. A lot of other cases, it might be perfectly answering all of your questions.
So what if I want to go further, Dave? Like, show me, is this driving my business forward? What does that look like?
So this next dashboard is, put a lot of time and effort into this one. This is how you can compare media channels to see if they are leading to more scripts than the others. So this is a scatter plot, right? You see on the top, you have the scripts or the engagements along the bottom and scripts along the top. Just in case I got that wrong, scripts across the top, engagements across the bottom. We'll just go both ways and see what happens.
Don't worry, Jamie's gonna make us look great. It's all good, right?
Jamie,
You got it?
put that in.
Okay, he's got it.
Just go into Tableau afterwards and reverse the axes if it's not the right thing.
Yeah.
So, but what this does is, if you think about it on it's not quite a quadrant chart, but a scatter plot. So you have this line across the middle. Down here is, I guess, reverse for the camera. Down here is low engagement, or high engagement but low script, meaning it's taking more engagements to create a post-engagement script. Up here is low engagement and high script, so it's less engagements required to lead to a script.
Okay.
So if you have media tactics that are down here, you have some that are down here, it's a pretty easy evaluation to say, well, we got to optimize out of these and put them up here.
This is taking everything that much further. So now, not only have you thought out strategically what do you need to measure and what should those benchmarks be, but now you're seeing if the dollars you're investing in each media program are paying off to deliver that script, and if so, at what cost. So you may have a Medscape program that's running, but you can see that if you break out the engagements that you're spending $350 per script, where you have an Express Scripts campaign running and maybe it's only $15 a script.
Right.
And obviously the analysis is deeper than that. There could be other things going on. There could be a payoff to having both tactics live. But at least this is starting to, beg the question, how do I optimize?
Right. And this gets back to a very important infrastructure question that we can even throw this schematic back on, where there's this one point at the top of including scripts. So we've talked a lot about having consistent data sources for all of the media performance data. But in the case of a HCP campaign where you're looking at script lift, you need to have that target list, and you need to have that script data, including in the same place, in some consistent format that you can connect between, and that takes a lot of information up front to talk about that. But there are other scenarios too where it's just registration, right? It doesn't have to be HCPs and scripts.
Right. Think e-commerce, or think think non-pharma for a second, if you will. And this is essentially saying, okay, for every dollar of media that I'm spending, what is that cost per conversion? What is that cost per registration? What is my ROI? And that, what we're trying to show here is, this is the kind of strategic thinking that really is required to pay off of that investment from a media standpoint. Because otherwise, at the end of the day, when you're asked by your boss, hey, was the $2 million investment last year, did it pay off? Where are we from an ROI standpoint? This lets you answer.
Right. Imagine taking the table home and seeing if it fits in that room, and then saying, doesn't. Bring it out of there and find another
When
one.
you want to know it fits ahead of time, when you've wanted to do that work and lay that groundwork. Because in the end, it's all about optimization.
Right.
And I think, without going into too much detail, that's going to be the topic for our next episode. We're going to be focusing on a couple of elements of optimization. What does it mean? When we look at all of our media channels, when and where and how do we pull those levers to make that media work for you, to push your business farther forward? Now that you have the media strategy piece that we've talked about, and we've got the measurement piece and the measurement strategy aligned, now we can start to answer questions of when to optimize, how often.
Well, the cadence is a huge question.
Cadence is critical.
And timing of things, yes. Paid search, you can start optimizing after a few days.
That's right.
There's a lot of volume in keyword information. Things like non-personal NPP third party, where you need at least a few email waves to say, well, we're just a lot of doctors on vacation, or this other programmatic style thing. Did we get enough data yet to start saying, is the audience there or not?
Right.
Did we run it over Christmas or some other major holiday where you're not getting the tactics you need to have enough data?
Right. How to answer the story, right? And the other thing too is I'm sure you're all going to be critically interested to see what we drink in the next episode. So you're going to have to tune in to find out. We're not going to give you a teaser for that. But until then, we're going to go over some critical recaps here of what we talked about today, just so it's all nice and neat for everyone.
We're holding these, so I'm just going to take a sip first.
Yeah, you're right. So, cheers.
So I think from an infrastructure and media and measurement perspective is you should always have access to your data, and it doesn't need to be in the same place, but you need to know where it is in some sort of access.
You need to own it, know it's yours, and you need to access it. And I think the second piece that goes into that is really then thinking about what are the steps you need to take to get that tape measure, to actually measure the campaigns in the first place, right? The data style guide, making sure things are uniform and that you've agreed on what source for your data.
And I think the most important one too is have the measurement strategy conversations at the same time, if not before the media strategy conversations. You can build a media strategy that would be phenomenal, but if you can't prove it worked, you've wasted a lot of time and effort.
Absolutely. You've essentially wasted
Investment.
the effort and likely not driven your business forward. So with that, we're going to wrap up the second episode of Media Mixology. Thanks again for everyone joining us. It's been our pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
See you next time.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Media Mixology. If you have specific questions regarding media, measurement, strategy, or beer, please leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to find out more about what _marketing does, you can find a link to our website below. See you next time.